morning, everyone. I'm trying to sound like I'm really bright and excited, but I'm excited, but I actually, thanks to some people in the audience, it was a very big night. So today I'm talking about a tool that I've written in my own spare time, which might help all of us probably, I hope. So let's talk about that. So a bit about me. I've been around for quite a while. I actually did a PhD in maths and stats way back in the day. And then I did a lot of federal government work, so defense, law enforcement, and then COVID came and I decided I probably should, maybe this consulting thing might be a bit risky. The world's going to end, so I went to CrowdStrike for a while, and then Avast, where I am still. And what else can I tell you? From Brisbane, Australia, which people should come to, and I'll show you why in a second. And I've been to my first back in 1999, which sort of says how old I am. And it was actually pretty much like last night, but a lot smaller, but in Brisbane. So, although somehow a lot of us were singing on stage with the band, which is like, I don't know how that happened. So, so that's sort of work for fun. Welcome to Australia. This is a snake in my backyard. I showed this last year at Fukuoka, and I wasn't going to show it, but people said, "Oh, we want to see some more snakes." So there's more snakes, another snake, and the reason these snakes are here, I think, is because they're after my beautiful puppy dog, Rufus. And occasionally you'll see the sign when you get to Brisbane Airport: "Welcome to Australia. Watch out for the snakes." So that was pretty funny. Anyhow, so today my talk. So it's based on some tools that I've written. I use myself all the time, just when I read a report, basically about threat actor naming, and because it's hard to keep track of all these different threat actors. So today I'm going to talk about how they're named, why you should care, where you can look up details on them, and what does this tool/service do, and why it might be helpful and useful. So threat actor naming. So who's ever heard of the threat actor Stealth Mango? I'm sure you could look it up, but yeah, probably no one has ever heard of it. What about Honey Mite? Might ring a bell, maybe? It's also known as Mustang Panda. So there you go. You might not pick it up if for a researcher at Honey Mite, you may not actually realize it is Mustang Panda. Microsoft has some great names, like Storm number, and Dragos have some heavy metal names, which is pretty cool. Magnelium is also APT33. So if you can guess how many names there are that I could find out there, I've got prizes for you. And even if you can't guess, I've got prizes. So if you come down later, I've got a little Australian APT. So I should show it to you guys. It's the clippy koala. So there's a few of these if you come down. Okay, so why would you care? So I'm sure everyone in our jobs, we have to read reports, CTI reports, news reports, blogs, vendor threat intel, stuff like that. You're always going to look at it. So you might wonder, who is that? What's their motivations? Where do they come from? How can I find out more about them? So you could search on the web. That's fine. Of course, it takes time. We don't have a lot of time. We're trying to do lots of jobs all the time. So it really comes down to the vendor/researcher, how they name them. So I'm sure a lot of people know the common names. I'll just throw some out here now. So like CrowdStrike have bears and pandas and chilemas and spiders. So as an example, Fancy Bear is also APT28 from not too far away. And Dragos use minerals, Xenotime, Electrum, Chernovite. Proofpoint typically uses numbers, TA505, TA542. Mandiant, or Google, I guess, they use UNC and APT and Fin. And Microsoft have changed recently, well, not too recently, but they used to use elements, like phosphorus, nobelum, strontium, but they changed to the theme of the weather, so typhoon, sandstorm, rain, storm. And one more I've got is SecureWorks. So SecureWorks uses metals like e-crime threat actors, gold, a Chinese Panda actor is a bronze. For example, Bronze Atlas is APT41 in their nomenclature. So if you've been looking at this stuff for a while, your mind has got all kinds of memory patterns, so you probably recognize stuff quickly. But if you're starting out, that's pretty tough, and people do get overwhelmed. For example, Lazarus has more than 50 names, which is just like crazy, right? So I don't like remembering too much. When I was working at CrowdStrike, I had to definitely remember all of the CrowdStrike names, and even after I left there, I could still, when you go to a sales event, you'd still see the actual sales SEs might not know the names themselves. It's quite challenging. Okay, so my motivation was I wanted to save time. I don't want to remember information that isn't useful, and my job is looking and reading and staying up to date on what's happening. So I'll talk about these tools I've written, so they can be used really quickly just to show information about a particular threat actor. I normally use actually a command line via sort of hotkeys and all kinds of stuff, but I've actually webified everything, so you can actually use it. All you need is a web browser to use it. So before I get to that, let's just talk about where threat actor descriptors can be found, like the main places. So primarily MISP. The MISP, we'll talk about it in a second. ETDA, you may not have heard of, well, you probably may have heard of, some of you, but TICERT became the Thai Electronic Transaction Developmental Authority, I think it's Digital Authority. There's MITRE, Malpedia, which we'll talk about as well, and of course Microsoft. So we definitely got all the data out of those repositories, but as well as that, I've been scraping data from public data from some vendors like Wiz. You may not all have heard of Wiz. They've got a pretty good set of notes on threat actors, mostly around the ones that they've seen as part of their work, but it's quite good. The big problem is they're not all frequently updated. They're difficult to link between them, otherwise this would have been done before. And obviously, some do cost money if you're thinking something that starts with virus and ends in total. Okay, so about MISP quickly. So I imagine that everyone knows, well, I shouldn't imagine everyone knows what MISP is, but just to define it. So it stands for these two guys in the front know what it is for sure. But malware information sharing platform. It started out as a platform for sharing indicators. It's very widely used and supported. There's even lots of great research being talked about this week in it. And it's an open source product, so you can share, correlate IOCs, and has taxonomies to classify the events and the data. Taxonomy is not just for cybersecurity data, but also for all kinds of things. We'll talk about that. So we're going to talk about the MISP galaxy, which represents clusters of data, which is event and attribute data. And a cluster is a way of describing the type of data. It has key value pairs. Most of the stuff in MISP is in JSON, but we'll get to it in a second. So here's some publicly examples of clusters. If you can read that, I hope. Yeah, cool. So there's clusters for countries, for example, that are defined in the world, or crypto miners. There's ones I'm not even sure they are. Malpedia has one. Actually, I think I saw one for first there. Yeah, it's a first cert, so it's CCERT services frameworks. There's lots of these MISP galaxies. We're going to talk about, so an example of a cluster, is the tool cluster. So these are malware tools that are being defined. And there's lots of these. There's clusters for sectors like financial, defense, education, legal, etc. There's even ones for intelligence agencies. But the one out of MISP we're after is a threat actor cluster. So the threat actor cluster currently has roughly 850 different threat actors. You can see the names of the various threat actors firing up there. And so Shaggy Panther, that's one I'm sure, I have no idea what that is. I have to look it up, but it sounds pretty cool. Even fishing elephant. So elephant's probably an Indian threat actor, but the fishing, it's hard to say. So each of these threat actors has aliases and synonyms. So Mustang Panda has, for example, a few of them are like Basin, Bronze President, Honey Mite, Red Lich, Temp.hex. And this is the only real technical part of it, I guess, is just digging down into how it looks. So there's a JSON file, has key value pairs in a certain structure. The key bits there that we're looking at to do our sort of cross-correlation of threat actors is the UUID, the value, which is the name of the actor, and the synonyms. And the other thing I've been pulling out is all the references as well. So we have those to use to be a searchable one. So that's MISP. Let's call them TICERT. They also use key value type operation, but unfortunately they use a different UUID for each threat actor. So that's a shame. It means you've got to sort of map UIDs to UIDs, but that's all, you know, an algorithm. They also update it pretty regularly, and you can download it freely. So they're doing great work. MITRE, they have what they call as different matrices for, they have different frameworks that categorize the different TTPs that threat actors use. So they have threat groups, and they break it up into the enterprise type of threat groups with like your endpoints, like your Mac, Windows, Linux, and cloud and network. They have a mobile matrix of data, which is where your Android, Apple devices are, and they have your operational technology. So in all of those three matrices, you have threat actors that operate and work in that space. And the other source I want to talk about is Malpedia. So Malpedia is hosted in Germany at Fraunhofer, technical university, I guess is the way of calling it. So they host malware samples, Yarrow rules, and they have threat actor data, but they also preserve the same UID in Malpedia, which makes it a lot easier to track threat actors across. They also have synonyms, malware families used, and also web references. And they'll have stuff in there that isn't in the other sources. So that's another source of data that we want to bring into our tool. If you want to upload data or download samples or use the API, you have to register for Malpedia. It requires an introduction. It's not too hard, obviously, in our environment, so it's something you might be interested in if you wanted to submit data, but you can actually download their bibliography completely free. So it's published and updated. Or you could even use their website, which is quite nice too. It's, for example, there's a little search for a Cozy Bear, and you can see the different aliases that it has. And this is just from this yesterday, I think. As you can see, it's been updated, references from 24th of June, so it's updated quite frequently. If you did want to join and you wanted to add, for example, a threat report you found, you can join and you can submit it. Doesn't happen straight away, so you could actually have to wait a few days, especially if they don't know who you are. But that's sort of a bit of friction in terms of adding more data to it. Now, the last one I was going to mention here is the Microsoft's MISP Threat Intelligence Center. They've been publishing the threat groups that they track. It's not as detailed as the MISP or TICERT, but it's better than nothing. Now, that's on the Mystic GitHub. Doesn't have any UIDs or references or the same rigor. Like you can see, here's an example I just pulled this morning. It also has, for example, if you could see that, it says red typhon, like has a typo in it. So, and I actually put a request in to fix it a couple of weeks ago, and it still hasn't been fixed. There's another typo as well for cobalt, spelt wrong. So you know, if you want your data to be good, well, that's one other thing that this tool can do. It can actually ignore certain bits of data that come from the different sources of the data. So it's quite flexible. So even if the data is somehow not clean, you can ignore bits that are dirty. And I did mention other vendors. So this is something that is tricky, but you can trawl them. Some work is manual, which is painful, but often that manual hit is something that I've done. So it doesn't update too often. So it's not. Now it's been done. It's not a problem for you, I guess. So some stats. So MISP has about 850 threat actors with about 1,200 aliases. MITRE, 180 threat actor groups, so 375. TICERT has 590 with almost 1,200 threat actor aliases, and Microsoft has 135 threat actor groups. So I didn't pass the aliases, but there's not that many. So you get an idea. There's quite a lot. So they might actually if you're trying to guess into the intersection of all these, or sort of the union of all these, what you actually get. But we'll talk about it in a second. So recently there's been press about vendors agreeing on naming. And it reminded me of this post from Florian back in 2015, Florian Roth, where he was you've probably seen his spreadsheet of threat actors where you log in and you can see you can actually update it and whatnot. But he was very frustrated, so he set up a Google Sheet that people can contribute to, which is another source of data because you can pull the sheet down, you can pass as a CSV and etc. But and then a few weeks ago, that was so in June the 2nd, so Adam Myers put this out that Microsoft and CrowdStrike are getting together to harmonise cyber threat attribution. Now, it's good that they're working together, but in some ways, I'd probably rather see behind the scenes their threat intel guys actually talking, candidly, not as opposed to this sort of blog post. But so what they've done is they've published the first version of their threat actor mapping, which I sort of showed a few pages back. So it's really a start, I guess, but it's really only Microsoft and CrowdStrike. So, and Joe Slowick, who is also talking this afternoon, you should go and see him at 3 o'clock. He has some great quotes in this, and I'll just read this quickly. This is movement in a direction towards a potential solution, but it's not a solution. If nothing else, it just highlights more of what the problem is. So, and it's a bit crazy. You have to have these sort of one-off agreements between different companies. It doesn't really scale, or it's not going to be long-lived. So while it'd be nice for the industry all to come together and agree, and I agree with Joe, I don't think it's ever going to work. So organisations will keep doing their own thing and naming things the way they want. So, right. So let's talk about the tool. So wouldn't it be nice if there's something you could quickly look up synonyms, allow for wildcards, regular expressions, web browser, command line, so you can automate things, outputs data that's aggregated from all these sources. So on the back end, there's lots of Python, which I'll share, but it basically gathers and updates data. Like a lot has been written to sort of minimize upkeep. So it updates sucking data from MISP, TICERT, MITRE, Malpedia, Microsoft threat actors, and some websites. So currently, out of this, we have 3,429 threat actors with their aliases. So no one's going to better remember something like that, right? So, with this tool, you can now search. I guess the search most people might be doing is to try to understand what the threat actor name is. So they might just put a name in one of the aliases and they'll get a hit. You can also search all the descriptions. So a lot of these, like MISP and Malpedia, TICERT, have descriptions for the threat actor as well. That can be quite useful. You understand what it might be. And even the references as well. So you can put you can pass or do a search for perhaps a vendor, some of their reports, to see what threat actors they've done work on. So yes, we talked about this. So you could be listening to a talk like yesterday morning, the great keynote that Soren gave. I put something he said in that, and I'll do it in the tool in a second, and we'll see what happens. And you might get more background on the threat actor. It could even be used for researchers. If you actually think you're trying to do attribution, you're trying to name a new family or a threat actor group, you could check for a collision in this space. So that's another way you could use it. So what I've done is I've set up a website. It's called thrunter.org. It's a great name because I'm amazed it was actually free. And it's very easy to use. And hopefully, I've called this thing the APT Zoo. So I just switch from here. We'll go to the APT Zoo, I hope, if it comes up. So, yep. That's what, see, this is thrunter.org. You go to this page. There's a link you can click on to lots of vibe coding and vibe image generation here, by the way. It's fantastic. So it takes you to the APT Zoo. So it's pretty simple. So you can type in a threat actor name or alias. So start typing, say, mustard. So I've got to go mustard panda. I've got Mustang Panda and mustard Tempest. So I can choose, say, Mustang Panda, because that's who I'm picking on at the moment. And I hit return, and it will go and show me, for example, okay, I found one result for Mustang Panda. Here's all its aliases I know about. Here's some descriptions from, here's one from Kaspersky in one of their reports, MITRE, MISP, some other stuff I've added as well, MITRE. Here's URLs in those different repositories related to that threat actor. I'll also add, one thing you can also add as well, Malpedia, the bibliography is quite comprehensive, and it can add quite a lot more to a search, because it won't just be on the threat actor. You might actually get references related to the tooling used by the threat actor as well. So it can be even more sort of voluminous to what you get. So I did the same search with that. You get the same references plus ones that weren't in that previous lot. These are the extra ones that Malpedia had that weren't previous in your search. So that is one thing. I mentioned yesterday I was at a talk. I won't talk too much about the talk, but I'll say that it was, of course it was of its clearance level, but it was in relation to some work done by Sector. So I could, for example, show me all URLs have the word Sector in it, and I'll search for that. And I probably spelled it wrong, sorry. Say again? SEC? TR. There you go. Oh, actually, I think that's actually a different one. So no, that's, oh, okay, well, I thought it was SEK, but okay. Anyhow, so look, what I would say here is I'll pick on some of our sponsors we've had here. So we've had Silent Push, I gave as an example. And okay, so Silent Push have got 7 results talking for threat actors from Lapsus, Fin7, Scattered Spider. This one here that they've made up, they've classified themselves, IMP1G, and it gives you a description of each of them and URLs that are found for that threat actor. So the FunNel threat actor, also known as Triad Nexus, has a few reports from Wiz and the US Treasury, and 3 relevant articles from Silent Push. So you can see how you could use something like this if you were investigating, sort of pivoting around based on what you're looking at. Or if you just wanted to have a quick, you didn't want to go with that sort of search, you could just type in Mustang Panda here, and it will give you the ones you can just basically copy and paste them all if you had to use them. What else was going to show you here, which is interesting? Yeah, so say I did a search for all descriptions that mentioned Ukraine. Actually, this website's actually live now. So Ukraine, I did a search for any description, any of these repositories that has the word Ukraine, and it's come back with 38 threat actors, and here they all are, and here's reports about them. So that can also be a useful way of getting more context around something you're looking at. What else is worth doing here? Yeah, so actually you can get a raw list of all these threat actors, which can be sort of nice to have. So you can pull that up, and maybe if you're going to search for Koala, maybe I was going to get a new Koala APT. Oh, there's a Koala team. There you go. So you might want to say, what is Koala team, for example? Or obviously, I've seen a lot of snakes in my house. I can put in snake and see what kind of snakes there are. So there's Operation Tunnel Snake. There's one called Snake, one called Snake Wine, Snake Charmer, Snake Mackerel. There's no sort of class of animals called snakes, and that could be perhaps something CrowdStrike might use. So that is how the tool can be used. So please have a play and let me know what you think. And what else was going to... So back to the talk, because I haven't quite... more I want to talk about yet. So is that... Okay, yes, so I just... because I wasn't sure my demo would work with the live demo. So skip, these are the sort of worst case, I'd show you screenshots of what you can do. Okay, so reminder how it works again. It gets data from different sources we mentioned earlier. And I've actually thrown Thrunter.org in there as well, because I can add in data easily now. So I can put in a report that came out right now, I can add it, bang, it's in. And you get it immediately. That's nice. I'd have to submit it to MISP, which unfortunately doesn't have many people working, or to Malpedia. There's a big queue of work they have already. Adding a reference to a threat actor is not high priority for them. So, and I guess I just mentioned this already, you can search it. So the other things you can do with it, which I haven't demoed here, but you can have your own repository of data. And you might have a good reason for that. You may have, you may want to do some of your own work and you're referencing your own internal Confluence or wiki pages or something like that. It's just a URL and you just have to configure it to actually reference that. And I mentioned if you cannot wait, then you can add things yourself. So, and there's a few reasons you might want to do it. So I mentioned Silent Push put a threat actor out recently, and they had a blog post about it, and it wasn't in MISP, but I wanted to track it, so I just added in the thrunter.org, and it's there. So let's say you're in an institution where you actually have to track other actors. You could use something like this as well. Perhaps there's an iron kangaroo, that means something to your organization. Then you could have your own references in there. Or Karma Koala. I was trying to think of cool names for koalas. Or if you had a lot of work you use with your commercial partner, then you could put those links into your own repository as well. You're not sponsoring anyone, but your Dragos or your CrowdStrike or whatever, Record a Future. The neat thing is this will work even in, I'll put it on the internet, right? But you could run this in an air-gapped network. So if you're in an area where you've got a, maybe you've got a dial between where you are and where it's got to get to, or you could run it all offline, which is pretty cool. And then, of course, no one can see what you're querying either, because there's logs of stuff, what's going on. You go, oh, that's interesting, someone's doing this. So there's a reason you might want to run your own. And there are other tools for this already. MISP have some software as well, which is great. You can build on that. Malpedia has a good interface I showed earlier. Oracle was really good as well. But the bit, it's really always really important to remember that there are lots of names for threat actors. They can evolve. You can have one threat actor perhaps working in multiple groups. We see that for like the North Korean threat actors. Attribution is based on the telemetry that the vendor sees or the researcher's sees. So it's hard to say this equals that. And that's sort of the fallacy with doing that, really. You'll see overlap with samples, perhaps the same samples turned up. You might see overlap in techniques. They might use something like, they might compromise a site and create a username password with the same very unusual, unique password. And that's obviously something you could use to tie between different threat actors in an intrusion. And this is a really good quote that Sean Sullivan, who I actually never met, but I met someone last night who has met him, and this is sounds true. So he said that threat actor attribution research is like being a paleontologist who's found some bones of a dinosaur. Everyone may have a bone, but no one has the full skeleton. So that's sort of a good way if you think about this attribution issue. I guess I'm not really thinking about this is a true Rosetta Stone. It's more of a tool that you can use to help flavor what your research is doing. That's what it's about, helping you get some more visibility into what something is telling you. So in the future, I'm going to get the malware family tooling in there because it suffers from a similar thing. Some malware families are named different names, and get some more sources in there. And the last one's a bit of a pain. So it's some really amazing reports. So say APT1 report from FireEye. FireEye has been sold to Mandiant, Google, and that report's dead. So you've got to pull it down from, places like Wayback Machine. Sometimes that's hard to do. So, and I have a strategy for that, which I could talk about perhaps, no, not out of time. And what else? The challenge is obviously getting it updated, but automation is your friend there. Some things are harder to automate, but I'm trying to do it. Standing up. So the last thing before I get kicked off is just a very quick thing. It's not a sales pitch because we don't sell, but I'll just tell you a bit about Avast, which this is sort of key for our, when I joined Avast 4 years ago. The mission that I joined for was that everyone has the right to free cybersecurity. We've got a lot of users. Most of them are free, which is good, but we are keen to help our partners in law enforcement and certs. So, and we have helped a lot of people with ransomware infections. Some stuff we publicize, like Bien Lian, we put out decryptors for that. Akira, we put out decryptors. Babuk, I'll say we, it's not me, it's my super smart colleagues. Reciter, who are rich. So we don't share everything because publicly, because this is the problem. It's an arms race with the threat actors if we do something like that. But you never know, perhaps we can help. And we do have some good success stories where we can actually help people who are having a bad day just by sort of artifacts we can pick up. So like we found a compromised Philippines Navy certificate used in a remote access tool. Contacted them. We had a Micronesia or Palau, it's a small country in near Australia, South Pacific. We picked up some badness there and we contacted them. And all of that sort of was mostly due to really a network of people through FIRST. So it's super duper these conferences to actually meet people and whatnot. So we can contact certs or FIRST or trusted introducers. So there's a QR code, that's my contact, there's the website. If I can help in any way, let us know. So thank you very much.
So do we have any questions for Dave? Just.
You don't get a koala though.
Yes. I can.
Alexandre.
Awesome. I really like your presentation because it's a very, very good summary of all the mess. So love it. It's great. I'm wondering about some stuff that we could work or at least do together to improve the situation. And you mentioned a point I think is very important is UID, perch redactor names that some vendors refuse to use and so on. So what do you think, what would be the incentive for a vendor to actually use UIDs?
Vendors have shareholders and that they're sort of motivated in a different way. But I guess if they wanted to emulate, I guess, the public perception like CrowdStrike and Microsoft's selling, then perhaps that could be a way of encouraging them to, adopt this, at least a standard in that point of view if they had a UID. Because the UIDs, I haven't gone into detail here, is a translation basically. So as I'm sure you know, so you have a UID somewhere else, you just got to have a mapping. So you'd link them all together. So Microsoft and CrowdStrike could have their own UID. SecureWorks, they don't have one. They could link it in there as well. So that would be, So if I could help, I would love to help. So.
Okay, awesome. Second question regarding what is the threat actor names? Very often we have proposal to include our threat actor database ransomware groups, but we have a dedicated cluster for that. So we have a Galaxy for ransomware groups. We do link between sometimes the two. What's your stand on this? Do you think that ransomware groups should be in threat actor names or should be completely separated?
Actually, you could also add in DDoS, part of that as well, or miners, because they have a different motivation. I guess I'm approaching it from the point of view of my job, so I want to know about those things. So I'm very biased. I'm not thinking in terms of I'm thinking more of a practical term, something I could use to make my job easier and your jobs easier, as opposed to not academic, but beautiful translation of. So there's a lot of other artifacts in the galaxies that we could use to flavor this more. But I guess I was just trying to ship something quickly that would be useful. So I've got a version of this I haven't shown, but it does more, I guess, on the command line side. But you're not going to want to run the code that I'm giving you. I mean, the code's all right, but you won't trust me, especially even if I compile it up, not a chance. So, and even if you download it, it's harder to run. So this is why the website was a nice way that everyone can just get easy access. So,
Thank you very much.
You get two koalas.
Thank you.
Any more questions? Chris.
Just one more question.
Yeah, man.
Thank you.
There's one more question.
Please.
One more, and we have no more time.
Okay. I went to your GitHub and I was looking maybe for the code for this out.
Can you speak louder?
Yeah. Is there any way to get access to the code? I went to your GitHub and didn't see the repo.
Yeah, no, it's coming up in a second, mate. Yeah, sort of. I was actually even opened the website up this morning. I've sort of been sitting on it, so.
Okay, cool. And also, have you ever thought of like a browser plugin? So when you're looking over your report, it just automatically highlights the threat actors?
Yeah, so the API, that's right. So you
if you wanted to collab on that, let me know.
Nice, man. Cheers. Braxton.
Okay. Another big applause for Dave.
I'm around all week, guys, so yeah.
Thank you so much.